The vision strikes the way a storm front arrives on Nephris. No clouds, no warning, just the sudden weight of a sky deciding to fall. In one breath, I am a dot moving across an ocean of dunes, compressor humming on my back, intake hoods trembling on their flex lines. In the next, the world pinwheels, and I am nowhere, everywhere, drowning in the futures that crawl toward us like heat mirages that never break. Cities glow and then gutter. Fleets pivot mid-warp to answer signals that are not commands, but hungers. A lattice spreads from star to star, delicate as frost and hard as law. It tightens, and worlds cough out their light. I see hands, human, imperial, pulling levers they think they understand while something older guides their wrists. I feel the tug, a presence like a tide under the tide. Sand in my mouth brings me back, real sand, warm and fine as ground bone. The compressor, belly up, hiccups a last exhausted whine. My hands, raw and shaking, grope for purchase on a dune that slides away with every attempt to rise. Kaiden? Khan's voice filters through the ringing, the single untrembling thing in a world that will not hold still. He skids down the slope, catches me under the arm, and hauls me to kneeling, to standing. You with me? I nod, because the part of me that can lie with my tongue is the first to recover. The part that could tell the truth about cities collapsing into their own shadows, about a mind that does not so much look at us as look through us, stays under the sand. Khan's gaze rakes my face, measuring pupil dilation, counting breaths. He smells the way we all do at mid-morning in the desert, sun, dust, metal, and the sweet sour edge of the gas, that faint bite like the rind of an unknown fruit. Another one, he says, already sure. That's 3 in a week. Just stood too fast. The words scrape out of me. Heat. Dehydration. He glances past me to our rig. The collection hood is listing. One of the anchor stakes has popped, and the windsock has tangled itself around the mast. Help me right it, then. We finish the run, I say too quickly, because anything other than finishing is admitting I am a problem that needs a solution. We promised 3 canisters. Jir's expecting payment by sundown. Khan's mouth does the thing it does when he wants to argue and knows he won't. He crouches, checks the anchor, resets the stake with the short-handled hammer, and together we lever the mast until the windsock blooms again. The intake conduits, cloth-sheathed and patch-studded, snake down into the shallow bore we drilled at dawn. At the bottom, the gas exhales in tiny pulses that the hood amplifies, sorts, cools, coaxes. We watch the first feeder vial cloud go opal and then clear to an almost blue that is valuable enough to make strangers cross distances you only cross for profit or love. We do not talk while the compressor labors. There is the pattern of work to return to, the dance of checking seals, tapping gauges, tightening clamps as the temperature shifts. My hands remember what to do, even as my eyes keep skipping sideways, trying not to look where the future had been. By late morning, we have the canisters. Khan slings 2 across his shoulders, and I take 1 and the tools, and we start the long walk in, down the ripplebacks where the wind sculpts knives from light, past the broken tooth of a buried crawler, its once gleaming track links now a rusted altar to effort, through the low place where wind moves the sand in visible rivers and stepping wrong means sinking to the hip. We know this route in our muscles. We talk about nothing. The settlement heaves into view like a ship hull at sea, rising from heat as if the desert finally decided to put something where it has always put nothing. Corrugated roofs, shade sails on patched poles, the squat architecture of people who build to be ignored. The trading post sits at the center, a shed widened and re-widened until it forgot its first shape, everything tethered to it. Racks for tools, stalls for parts, an awning where the elders sit when they want to be seen, a slice of shadow that belongs to anyone who has something to trade and no other shade to trade it in. We step into the cool, not cool beneath the patchwork canopy and are immediately buffeted by speed. Voices talking over voices, the chime of portable scales, the click-wink of scanners tasting canisters with delicate tongues. Off-worlders stand out even when they try not to. Armor that costs more than a family, boots that have never seen home dust, devices that whisper to their wrists and make our tools look like fishing hooks. They barter through interpreters or through arrogance, and their eyes stray to anything that shines. Khan shoulders us a path. He knows everyone, and everyone knows him. He's been harvesting since before his voice dropped. Respect clings to him the way grit clings to sweat. We sell 2 canisters to jeer for a price that makes all 3 of us feel clever and robbed, then stand a while and watch the flow. There are more Imperials than there should be. Their badges are edge-worn to suggest they've been here long enough to belong. Their questions snoop past the answers they're given. The Independents eye them the way feral dogs eye a cart of meat. "Kaiden," Khan says, pitching his voice low and sideways, "your admirer's in." I follow his gaze. Astrid stands under one of the mesh sunscreens, pale as a memory of winter, her portable array unfolded around her like the petals of a mechanical flower. Sensory veins tick in the slight breeze. Her wrist bandolier is a field of tiny lights crawling in patterns I cannot read. She's marking the air the way our old singers marked a story, laying points on a map that isn't quite a map. She catches my eye and lifts a hand. "Do you have a moment?" Khan gives me a shove that is more affection than force. "Go. I'll make sure no one slaps a requisition tag on our remaining can and calls it contribution." I thread through the bustle to her island of shade. Up close, she is all contradiction stitched well. Sunburn along the collarbone where the cream mist, hair braided back in the local style, but with a clasp that hums faintly, a shirt bleached toward our color, but cut in a way no tailor here does. She smells like heat and metal and, very faintly, one of our teas. "I'm seeing shifts," she says without preface, voice taut the way a line is taut when it's holding something heavy. In the lattice, the gas's molecular habits, what it wants to do when left alone, are changing. I've been measuring preemptive effects for months, but this is not drift. This is direction. Have you... She stops herself. Headaches? I pick a word that's less than the truth and more than a lie. Sometimes. Her face flickers. Something like relief and dread share the space of a heartbeat. If anything feels different beyond that, you can tell me. A shout rips the air. Then another, higher, a slash of panic. The sound of an energy discharge follows, flat and hot and wrong, under a canvas roof. Instinct lifts every head. Instinct lines up feet toward escape or toward trouble. Khan is already moving past me, jaw set. I move with him. Astrid collapses her array with a two-handed sweep and snaps it shut like a book someone doesn't get to read anymore. We are 3 currents converging on the same rock. At the trading post's edge, the shade breaks and the sun nails everything to the ground. 2 squads of off-worlders crouch behind upturned tables and crates, insignia hastily smeared over with desert dust that cannot hide shapes we have learned to recognize. One set bears the ugly efficiency of imperial issue. The other wears the more personal ugliness of mercenary kit. Between them, alone and too still, stands Jenna with a canister hugged to her chest like it will keep her ribs from flying apart. Her face is the white of heat shock. Sweat paints roads down the dust on her cheeks. "Jenna," I breathe, and my feet go. Astrid's fingers catch my sleeve, voice sharp. "Don't. If I don't, she dies," I say, and shrug free without looking, because looking would show me all the ways she is right, and I cannot afford them. I take the first steps, and the world goes simultaneously narrow and enormous. The heat shiver puts a ripple in the air. Through it, vectors draw themselves in faint threads. Where a bolt will pass if a finger tightens, where a shoulder will dip to reload, where sand will give under a boot and slide a man's hips out of alignment. I taste copper. The hum of my own blood synchronizes to something not quite heartbeat. Move now. Stop now. One stride more. Duck. I ride the edges of decisions that haven't been made. An energy bolt hisses past where my throat was supposed to be. Another eats a divot from the crate behind me. I arrive at Jenna. In the space the last volley emptied, grab her by the elbow, and pivot our bodies into the bite of a stack of sand-filled sacks. I feel the heat of a bolt through 2 layers of fabric and 1 of luck. She looks at me with a mouth that will not close. Hold this. I shove the canister across, fingers checking its seal out of habit. I breathe and wait for the next shape of the fight. It arrives, local security, 6 of them, bright orange vests, and the unamused faces of people who have been called babysitters by men with guns. Warning shots bark from old rifles. Authority arrives in the one form it always does: volume. The off-worlders snap shut into non-lethal positions with the collective annoyance of interrupted children. The air unknots. People who were statues remember how to be mammals, how to breathe and move and be loud afterward to pay down the debt of fear. Khan finds me, checks me with a hand on my shoulder the way you check a tool before you trust it. Astrid arrives a breath later, scanning the scene, and then me, her eyes doing the flicker that means she has questions and has ranked them in a list and hates every number on it. "What I saw," she says low, "isn't physics." "I know," I answer, and the truth of that word drains something cold and clean through my chest. "We can't talk here." We walk, not far, far enough, away from the offended voices and the offended guns and the elder's shade. Astrid leads because she always does, when the way goes toward instruments. Her lab squats at the settlement's ragged edge, where the dunes begin to argue again with our half-persuaded ground. The outer shell is local, scrap and canvas, sun-bred bricks in a low wall. The inside, when the door seals behind us, is a hum. Lights dream in bands along the ceiling. Air moves with purpose. Tables hold equipment with names I never learned and functions I have half guessed. "Sit," she says, which is both instruction and kindness. She does not turn on a recorder. She does not pull a scanner into the space between us. "Tell me." So I do. Not everything, not at once, not well. The story comes out in pieces that try to escape as metaphors, tides and hands and threads, because the solid nouns won't hold the thing I touched. I describe the puppet grace of the soldiers in my vision, the pressure in the walls of that unseen room, the way today's fight felt like walking a diagram I could barely read. Astrid listens the way I've seen her listen to a censor, Still, except for the slight tilt of posture that says attention is a muscle, and she has trained it. Her excitement, when it shows, is the careful kind. It keeps looking at its own feet to make sure they're not stepping on anyone's neck. The gas has always had preemptive drift, she says when I stop. The word's precise because imprecision would break something in her code. Near-field probability bias. That's a phrase some people use to mean luck. This is not luck. This is directed preemption, externalized, and the lattice shifts. Chitin, if it's evolving, it isn't doing so as a natural resource. It's taking instruction or giving it. I open my mouth to ask from where and to whom, and the lab door answers with a hollow knock, then another. Astrid's jaw tightens. She palms the lock pad, but the second code is local, and it sings back to a handprint that isn't hers. The door opens to let in heat and elders. They enter in an order that is older than any of us. Soren first, face carved to a smoothness that is the desert's version of mercy. Then Mina, with her eyes like obsidian seeds. Then Harko, who forgets he is not as young as the men he lectures. Behind them, as if the procession had wanted one thing soft, Khan, caught between shame and anger, looking smaller because he knows both belong to him. Astrid steps away from me without quite putting herself in front. She doesn't reach for a device. She doesn't have to. The posture is signal enough. Soren's gaze passes over her the way a shadow passes over a rock. Acknowledgement without concession. Caden, he says, and my name in his mouth is a word from a language I have not learned. You are talked of. Not well, we can talk here, I say, where the air moves and the instruments are honest. The air moves here to the rhythm of off-world machines, Mina says, not cruel, not kind. Our houses breathe a different way. Soren lets the weight of silence settle in the room before he adds another gram. You consort with those who have kept us in their ledgers. You tell children stories that make them run toward edges. You bring danger under a roof that is not yours. I keep my voice where it needs to be. Not protest, not defiance. I bring what is already here. Then you bring it louder. He looks at Khan, not at me. We care for our own by keeping them from winds that blind. Khan flinches as if struck. He finds my eyes finally. I thought they'd help. He swallows. I was wrong to bring them? You brought truth, I tell him. You cannot know how it will be used. Soren draws breath the way you do when you're about to say a thing that will not be taken back. Caden of the Dunes, son of Nephris, by the council's voice and the custom that keeps our children alive, you are exiled. The word is a hinge, and the world swings. Exile is not a metaphor here. It is the arithmetic of water and shade, and who gets to stand under which? Astrid steps into the hinge, her hands open, palms empty. You can't. He's not a superstition. He's a phenomenon. If we model this, if we understand... Soren's head turns by a degree that would be polite if his eyes were not knives. Understanding is the name your people give to the first day of taking. We stand in a triangle of unshared definitions. My pulse is loud enough that I hear it in my throat. I consider the words that would work and find none that do not make things worse. Let me finish my work, I say instead, which is both too much and not enough. If I can tell you what it is that's looking through us, maybe nothing. Mina says softly. Maybe that is the word we must practice again. Soren gestures. The door opens. Heat leaps in. The elders do not touch me. They do not have to. The sentence carries itself. They leave, but Khan lingers as if gravity has remembered him. He puts his hand to his chest, then holds it toward me. The old gesture our mothers taught us when we were too small to hold knives. "I am sorry," he says, and the fact that the words are insufficient does not keep them from being true. "I know," I answer. There are other words about edges and pushes and how sometimes there is no good hand to take. I do not say them. He goes. The lab is suddenly larger and emptier. The hum of machines has a hollow in it where the shape of my life was. "I didn't mean for this," Astrid says. She looks not at me, but at her hands, as if the wrongness might be a residue she can scrub off. I always think if we can name a thing, we can negotiate with it. "Some names negotiate back," I say, and let myself sit, because if I don't, my knees will decide for me. The room smells of ozone and distilled water and the faint medicinal mint of antiseptic cloths. Astrid moves again, purposeful, gathering. She is built to respond. When she looks up, her face has become the one she wears when she is about to propose something that would get other people killed if they were less stubborn than she is. "There's a site," she says. "Imperial, deep desert. Black research alongside something else. Something that isn't in any registry in any system I can access without setting alarms that will sing all the way to a capital I have never been invited to. If we go there, we might peel back the first layer. How do you know?" The question comes out harsher than I intend. Exile peels the skin from every syllable. "Because I read the wrong mail," she repeats with a grim little smile. "And because I watch what the Empire points away from as much as what it points toward." A slow pressure gathers behind my eyes, not the tide this time, but the first hint of it. The room pivots around a fulcrum I can almost see. Sand slopes, and a shadowed mouth opens in a bowl of dunes, and a structure sits like an egg that never meant to hatch in a place where eggs do not exist. The architecture in my mind is wrong. Curves that have nothing to do with wind, angles that make the stomach miscount. I grip the edge of the table. When the lab returns, the taste in my mouth is iron again, and the decision has already happened inside me. I am only catching up to it. "When do we leave?" I ask. "Before your elders decide exile is too gentle," she says, because she has already done those calculations. 2 packs, water for 4 days if we're careful, rations, scarves, the small battery, the bypass device, a rifle if you have one. I have one. Everyone does, even those who pretend they do not. We move like people who have moved before, practiced, economical, saying only the sentences that carry weight. Astrid seals vials into padded sleeves, rolls up maps that are mostly lies but have true bones, slings a foldable panel for charging over the pack, and secures it with a knot she learned from someone who learned it from someone who was born here. I go home once, and it is the last time. I do not touch anything I cannot carry. I take the rifle and the ammo and a cloak and the scarf that was my mother's. I take the small tin with the good tea because there will be moments when boiling water is an act of defiance, and we will want to perform it. Outside, the light has slid toward the hour the elders favor, when judgment looks like wisdom, because shadows are longer. I do not walk near their shade. Khan is not there. I am grateful for the mercy of that absence. People do not look at me and do not look at me. The space around me is respectful in the way of a cleared patch where a thing happened and you can still feel it. Astrid meets me at the settlement's edge. where the anchors of the windbreak line up like ribs and the desert beyond heaves with the slow breath of a sleeping thing. She checks my pack with the glance of a partner who is not about to let pride kill us. I check hers. We trade one item each, a way to promise we'll stay together long enough to make it matter. "Ready?" she asks. I look back once. The roofs are dull coins. The trading post's canopy flutters a little, as if waving, as if fanning itself. Everything I know has become a series of outlines. The boy who walked out this morning with a compressor on his back will never complain about its weight again. "Ready," I say, and the word does not break. We step into the sand. The wind rises as if it has been waiting for our footfalls to begin its song. Behind us, the settlement shrinks by the half step, the quarter step, the memory. Ahead, the dunes arrange themselves into questions no one has ever answered and everyone has. The sun walks with us until it doesn't. The desert accepts our bodies the way it accepts every moving thing, without comment, without malice, with the slow sincerity of a mouth that takes and keeps and sometimes, if you are patient and lucky, gives back a story. By dawn of the second day, the desert had taught our legs its arithmetic. 10 strides steady, 3 tasting the wind, 1 to scan the sky for the brown gnats of patrol craft. That meant you dove and turned yourself into a small, patient rock. We rationed breath and water with the same care. Astrid checked the scanner on a schedule she did not announce, but my body began to anticipate. The little device purring against her palm before it chirped and went quiet again. We walked by landmarks that were only landmarks because we named them. The ribcage dune, the split tooth, the sleeping manta. At noon, the heat laid a hand on our necks and kept it there. By evening, our shadows were long enough to step in. When we slept, we did it in turns under a low-strung cloth that mostly convinced our bodies we were not meat. On the third morning, the land opened its mouth. One moment was more dunes, more pale slopes scribbled by wind. The next, the sand simply stopped, as if the surface had been skimmed off with a giant blade. A basin stretched below, not natural and not denying it. At its center sat the facility, imperial geometry welded to a form that did not belong to a species that knew right angles. The walls were all wrong, metallic panels stitched into curves that felt like ribs, support pylons that bent like stalks, seams that rippled when the light changed. It did not look built. It looked grown, and then convinced to pretend. Astrid went very still. "I thought I was preparing myself," she said, quiet, as if any louder would wake it. I wasn't. The air changed as we descended, not cooler, charged. Hairs lifted along my arms as if a thunderstorm had been buried, and we were walking along its skin. The scanner's readout flickered in a rhythm that didn't match any weather I knew. A pressure gathered under my eyes. "Headache?" she asked, not looking away from the screen. "Something like it." We took our time choosing the approach, crawling lips of shadow, scabs of rock, too stubborn to be sanded away. The main gate was a beast's jaw, guarded, watched, humming with attention. I watched, and the vision slid into place without knocking. A side mouth, smaller, lower, a maintenance hatch, whose patrol was a bored loop timed to a conversation about rations. A sliver of silence shaped like a human body. "Left flank," I said. 20 meters past that broken girder, down a slope you won't like." Astrid's mouth pressed flat for a heartbeat. She hates trusting what can't be repeated on a bench, but she nodded. "Show me." We reached the hatch with the part of me that wanted to run already laughing, sheer relief at a prediction that fit. 2 guards paced inside the lip of a recessed door, their voices low, their eyes elsewhere. The hatch itself was an oval set into the facility's skin, gleaming faintly with an iridescence that shifted between colors I could name and one I could not. Astrid knelt, uncapped her bypass device with the ease of a ritual, and pressed it to a seam. Symbols I'd never seen glitched, stuttered, became a language of bars and dots, and then a straight green. The hatch unsealed with a sound like breath. We slipped through. Inside was another climate altogether, a cool that wasn't kindness, air that had been cleaned and trimmed, light that came from everywhere and nowhere. The floor was alive under my boots, not moving, but the stillness of a large animal at rest. Pipes carried the gas in transparent loops, and where the flow kinked, it threw rainbows into the air. The walls carried a sheen like scales when you looked wrong, and brushed your sleeve when you looked too long. Astrid's eyes tried to be everywhere. She forced them back to the path. We keep left if we get turned around. Left, always left, a lab habit, a maze habit. She marked the junctions with a grease pencil, a quick X at ankle height, like she was drawing stitches. The first alarm wasn't a sound. It was a feeling, a ripple through the floor that touched my knees and spine and then reached my tongue. The second alarm was sound, a deep, layered thrum that had the shape of a siren but none of the urgency, as if the facility was notifying itself the way a body notes a scratch. Lights along the ceiling folded from white to red. The air went thinner. "Time's up," Astrid said. "Unnecessary." We moved faster, which in corridors like these means less carefully. The hallways didn't quite stay where they were. Walls bowed, angles softened, distances adjusted in increments too small to be noticed, until you noticed you were breathing harder and going nowhere. "It's changing itself," Astrid whispered, not meaning to be a poet. Or, "We're walking the wrong way and it's letting us." I let the vision find me because pretending I could stop it wouldn't save us. The facility's bones opened, a schematic not on paper, but in inches. A path unrolled, not straight, never straight, with ducts we could crawl through and one hatch that would not open and one that would if I pressed my palm to it in exactly the way I didn't know my hand could move. We took that way. We crawled the duct. We dropped into a room that listened to us pass like a sleeping thing deciding whether to wake. We reached a space so big the air had an echo. The core chamber was a throat. Pillars curved up and met in a ring that held a vortex. Not a sphere, not a pool, a column of motion that rotated and folded, wind within glass without wind. Gas spun in it like a school of fish under a predator. Every few seconds the whole thing would shiver in a way that made my teeth ache, and patterns would snap into being across its surface. Lattices, yes, but also something like script, like music, if music could be briefly seen. "It's beautiful," Astrid said, and then, afraid of herself, "and very wrong." We were not alone for more than the time it took for awe to make us slow. Boots came in by squads, Imperials in the armor that moves like a decision's already been made. Behind them walked a man taller than his shadow should allow, in the black and bone white of the Inquisitorius. His eyes did not glow. That would have been merciful. They held light too well, as if pupils were a choice he had once made and regretted. "Welcome," he said, the syllables polished by an education that no longer existed. "Subjects." The alien pressure that had lived at the edge of my days pressed forward, testing the inside of my skull like a tongue probing for sore tooth. It avoided Astrid and then didn't. It touched the edges of me and then pressed, and I felt a wordless curiosity that wasn't kind and wasn't cruel. A biologist's willingness, a child's focus. We've come very far to study a very small thing, the Inquisitor went on, how it moves, how it chooses, how it opens doors. Astrid moved half a step, so she was between him and me. It was ridiculous and human. "What is it?" she asked, because she cannot let a question pass if it belongs to her field. "A signaling medium? An echo of something larger?" He smiled. It was the smile of a man who has never had to refuse himself anything. It is sufficiency. It is reach. It is instruction folded into appetite. Your employers think it a lever. The Empire thinks it a floodgate. They are all delightfully wrong. His gaze flicked to me. "You are not wrong. You are something else." "Hungry," I said, because I needed to be a person who made sound. "Fitted," he replied. "Not susceptible, no. Resilient, which is rarer." The guards advanced without a gesture from him, hands on our arms that were polite, the way traps are polite. Astrid stiffened. I let them catch me because I wanted my hands free, because the bypass device was still in Astrid's pocket, and because she had already told me, in a different room, what it could do if she risked it. I kept my eyes on the vortex to keep them off the fear. "Don't?" the Inquisitor said conversationally as Astrid's fingers moved. "You will like the test chamber. It hums in a key that calms mammals." "Now," Astrid whispered and stabbed her thumb down. The pulse wasn't sound. It was subtraction. For a blink, everything important went away. Hum, light, charge. The guards' grips loosened, not because of charity, but because their muscles forgot how to receive orders. The vortex stuttered, then reeled like a dancer who has been spun one too many times. The Inquisitor's head snapped toward Astrid, and in that instant his eyes were empty of anything except a single, very human hatred. "Run," I said, for the luxury of being right about one thing. We ran. The corridors remembered how to be corridors when the alien pressure fell back. Left, left, left. Astrid's grease excesses blinked at us from knee height like winks from an ally we hadn't earned. Behind us, the siren that isn't found its voice. Real alarm skated under it, panicked and human. Somewhere a door tried to remember. It should not open, and did. We didn't look back. You don't, in places like that, you don't gift the thing that wants you the knowledge that it still has you. The maintenance hatch was where it needed to be, and the desert beyond it hit us in a sheet of heat and light so complete the world went white for a breath. We slid and fell the first 20 meters because feet that have learned to floor forget how to love sand. Astrid went down hard on a knee, and I hauled her up by the pack strap, and we kept moving because stopping invites the mind to show you what it can show you when your hands are empty. We did not stop until the facility had shrunk to a bruise at the edge of sight, and the mouth of the basin had closed behind distance. Only then did we let the dunes take us to our knees, hands pressed to the crusted surface as if we could feel the planet's own breath through it. Astrid's laugh turned into a cough. I thought, she swallowed, I thought he was going to speak in the other voice. He did, I said, because under his words had been a current with a different grammar, and I'd felt it turn toward me like a river that had found a new channel. Just not where we could hear it. The pressure was gone from inside my head, the way you don't hear a tone until it stops and your skull breathes. In its place, A sensation remained, not a touch, but the knowledge that you have been touched, observed, marked as a variable worth controlling. "We can't go back," Astrid said after a while, matter of fact. "Even if exile didn't make that answer for you, the Empire will be busy and curious and furious, and they will want to ask their questions in rooms that lock on the outside. We weren't going back," I said. I turned onto my back and stared up until the bright stopped needing to hurt. High overhead, a hawk drew a line through the sky like someone testing a pin. Astrid rolled to face me, cheek dusted gold. Then forward. "You said there were people who don't trust easily." I did. I thought of stories you only hear if you listen from the edge of a gathering, of names that are really positions, of alliances that assemble like structures in a child's toy. Click, click, become bridge, become shelter. They'll be hiding close enough to move and far enough not to be seen. "We have to tell them what we saw," she said, and then winced at the folly of telling people who prize distrust that you'd like to bring them something unbelievable. "We have to tell them enough," I corrected, "and I have to keep breathing." "I can help with the second condition," she said, and found the water bladder, and we passed it back and forth between us like speech. When the light began to drop, the heat's hand lifted, and the desert's other noises came back. The tiny shifting of grains, the dry sigh of a plant that will live another day, the hungry distance of a thing that hunts at night. We stood. The facility on the horizon had stopped smoking. It sat there like a stone you want to kick and don't. We set off at an angle that would not bring us brashly into any known path. Astrid checked the scanner and then ignored it, letting her feet find the logic of the land. We walked until the sky found its purples, until the first star knifed in, and then friends came to keep it company. When we stopped, it was because the dune we chose whispered back the right way when we touched it. I slept, and when I dreamed, the facility's throat opened again, but the voice was far away and angry at something I could not see. I woke with my heart under my tongue and the knowledge that distance works on minds like it works on heat. It falls if you keep moving. In the morning, we did. We followed the line where the dunes grew a little taller and the wind wrote a different script. At noon, Astrid pointed to a seam in the sand that reflected just wrong, and beneath it were the first signs a human could have left. A peel of foil, a stripped tape that had been walked on, the ghost of tread. We followed the ghosts until they turned into prints, and the prints became the suggestion of a wall where no wall should be. A voice came out of what was only air until it wasn't. "Stop," it said. "Send forward your names and the reason they matter." "Astrid," she said, lifting her hands, all devices quiet and visible. "She learns things that keep people alive." "Kaiden," I said, and did not add the rest because I didn't know what I was now that wasn't simply exiled and tired. "He sees." The air in front of us showed us a man who had decided he would not be impressed again this year. Cybernetics crept from his temple into his cheek like roots following water. "Maybe," he said, "but you're either brave or foolish to come here by day." "Both," Astrid said, "and carrying trouble." He smiled without humor. "Then you're in the right place." We stepped through a trick and into a camp that made sense. Repurposed harvest frames turned into scaffolds. Tents staked in a way that would survive anything but the wind deciding to go to war. People moving who knew what each other's hands could do. The smell of solder and stew, the sound of a world that had been broken deciding how to work anyway, but that belonged to after. The mouth of the world was still behind us, and I could feel the ghost of its breath on my neck. I looked back once toward a horizon that had learned my name, and then I turned my face into the camp's noise and the next set of problems, and I did not look back again. The camp receives us the way the desert receives anything that survives it, without ceremony, with a narrowness that could be caution or kindness. The man with the rooted eye names himself Knox and names the space in a better word than camp. Network, he says. And the word feels like a hand with calluses. They clear a table for us, with the economy of people who have taken rooms from ruins before. Astrid spreads maps that are lies and truth stitched together with pencil, unrolls printouts of waveforms that look to me like the silhouettes of mountains at dusk. I unroll myself. I tell them the facility, the throat, the man with eyes that held light like theft, the gas, the pressure in the mind. Astrid tells them the parts of my story my mouth can't name. The lattice shifts, the preemptive bias turned from drift into steering. Someone snorts at steering. Someone else sets a kettle on the coil so the room smells like tea and metal and the smoke of clothes dried too near a soldering iron. Gia steps in later with sand in her hair and a rifle in her palm that looks like a violin in the right hands. She watches while we speak, not the words but the space between them, as if truth lives there where breath lands. Knox asks questions I respect him for. Not, "Are you sure?" but "What exactly did the floor do to your knees when it moved?" Not, "What does the Empire want?" but "Where is their attention when they think no one is watching?" When we're done, he leans back like a gate swinging to a decisive angle. "We suspected rot," he says. "We smelled it on cargo. We saw it in orders that didn't align with the men who gave them. But this," he covers his teeth with his lip as if even the shape of a smile might waste something. "This is bigger than their greed. We won't save a galaxy," Gia says, and the way she says it does not carry defeat, only calibration. "We might save a place to stand in one." "And live," Astrid adds quiet. "Live and name our own breaths." That night, they give me a space to sleep and walls thin enough to let me hear the network breathe. The dreams have teeth. When I wake, someone has left a cup and a note, an arrow to the mess tent, and the word "eat" that somehow doesn't feel like an order. The days that follow become work, and work becomes a way to hold the shaking inside its bones. Gia takes me to the range and teaches me to move with the rifle until it moves like a limb and not a promise. Knox teaches me to read the desert in closer script. How dunes mean different things when they rake left instead of right. How the wind carries word of walkers before the ground does. Astrid does not need to teach me anything and does it anyway, what a straight signal looks like before it feels like a command. They make me a room inside a room, sealed against drafts and the camp's voices, with a chair and a mask and the gentlest ice a cooler can make. We take the gas in a dose measured like prayer. When I say ready, Astrid looks like someone sending a friend into a bad argument with a judge, and I go in. The first dive is all thunder, the network of alien thought hitting me like a squall head on. I try to look at too much at once and get dragged by a current my mind can't name. Astrid hauls me out when my head lolls and my nails bite my own palms. The second dive, I go down a step slower. I learn the undertow, the sideways pull of a thought stream. I let go of the impulse to track every thread. I start to listen for the places where this vast mind has to knot itself to touch us. By the third day, I can find the knots. They are not places, not in the way a dune or a door is. They are the moments where realities overlap, like palms pressed together. Thin points where instruction comes through stronger, because the distance between the send and the received is less than it was a breath ago. Here, I say when Astrid coaxes me back with words and the clatter of a cup on metal, and all I can do is point to a map and an emptiness, and then a spiral I draw with my finger on the table because I don't know how else to show it. Here is where it feeds. Not the facility throat, beneath that, deeper. A nexus they'd call a nexus if they wanted to make it sound like architecture and not hunger. Knox nods like he's marking targets. Gia's thumb taps the rifle stock in a rhythm that matches my teeth wanting to chatter. Astrid's light eyes go lighter. A crossing, she says, an interleave. If we cut it, I say because my mouth needs to test the shape of the hope out loud, we don't kill it. We starve our end of the line, starve Nephris, Knox says. Starve the lattice here. Starve me, I say, and the words are not tragedy. I think the visions are a side effect of the same line that feeds the thing reaching. If we cut it, it stops. For me, for anyone else like me. For the Imperials in their borrowed bodies, he looks at me then straight the way a blade is straight. Can you live without it? I didn't live with it, I answer. I endured. The next morning, the desert brings an answer we didn't ask for. Dust cones rise on the horizon and resolve into walkers, their legs eating distance. Gunships ride the hot air with insultingly slow confidence. The Empire has found the network, and because nothing happens alone anymore, I feel the alien attention climb the ridge of my spine like a cold hand. It is not words, but if it were, they would be. Found you. We run the plans we had practiced as if we had always meant to use them today. Trenches become trenches. Nets become nets. It isn't enough. Empire is good at the arithmetic of violence. When the first shells land, the camp moves like a single body already used to bleeding. Knox is everywhere, shouting in a voice that has learned to cut through fear. Gia's rifle finds the soft parts in hard armor. Astrid vanishes into the comms tent to make our cries for help sound like something allies will run toward instead of away from. Jenna appears at my elbow as if she grew there, a bandana masking her nose and mouth, eyes old in a way that makes me want to spit in the sand and break something and build something to make up for it. Where do you want me? She asks. Where you don't die, I answer, which earns me a snort that reminds me she learned her danger from the same place I did, all around us. Old cards, I add, pointing. When they push, pull us. She nods and goes. I put my shoulder to a barrier and fire until the weapon needs cooling. I push a cart and haul a wounded man. I run batteries to the far array and am almost comforted by how ordinary it feels to carry a thing that keeps a thing alive. We hold, then we don't. Then we hold again by deciding we are a wall that has forgotten how to fall. I am in the middle of reloading when the sky lifts to show a shape I have not seen in years. A knife-winged ship whose hull carries the scars of 1,000 stupid, brave choices. The Fringe Alliance writes itself across our sky with engines that sing a song we didn't know we remembered. Astrid's voice tears out over the comms, a laugh on it that I think is the first laugh I've heard from her that did not immediately apologize. They came, she says. They actually... Believed you, Knox finishes, and then doesn't allow us the luxury of relief. Strike team, he barks, while they're occupied. Our bodies know who we are. Gia, Knox, Astrid, me. Two others whose names I learn only by the way they breathe. We load into a transport that used to be a harvester and now has plates welded across its old vulnerabilities. The driver calls us fools and angels and pushes the throttle so hard the engine makes a noise like an oath. The facility sits in the bowl like a secret that ran out of places to hide. The main gate is armored and alive. The auxiliary entrances are teeth and lips, and the promise that you will be chewed. Astrid loops their cameras for a handful of seconds she can guarantee. I spend them like coins on a table, buying us a corridor's worth of grace. Inside, the air is the same cruelty. The alarms are screaming in human and in whatever the facility uses for its own speech. We move left, 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 and the walls try to learn us again, to soften our angles into angles they can digest. I ride the sliver of my sight that remains, the diagram overlay, and we slip past one patrol to meet another. Gia teaches a man the suddenness of endings. Knox's decoys bloom and confuse and die in our stead. Astrid's hands move faster than my eyes. We reach the last door, the one I cannot open with my palm on my worst day or my best. Astrid looks at it, at her pad, at the way the light glances off the metal skin, and she smiles the paired smile of someone who has just found an edge. Talk to me, she tells the door like it has a name she might coax, and when it refuses, she tells it a different story it would rather listen to. It opens because everything does for someone, at least once. The chamber is worse than before because now I understand it. The vortex churns, script whirling across its skin like the names of the dead, and the conduits feed it with the tenderness of done deals. The Inquisitor steps from the far side as if he never left this room, as if he is the room. You, he says to me, you returned. We brought a knife this time, I say, and point at the conduits. He gestures negligently. Guards peel from the walls like regret. Gia makes her shot before any of us breathe again. Knox throws a shield of flickering light that absorbs the first volley and fails the second, as it was always meant to. Astrid sprints past me toward the control pillar, and I follow to be the body that catches the body that will otherwise slow her down. She plugs in, rides error messages like surf, and forces the facility to think it is safe and so open itself to the very thing that will hurt it. We reach the conduits and set charges with hands that whiten at the knuckles, because they have not forgotten they are human. The first one pops and shrieks and sprays light like a cracked shell. The second takes persuasion and the kind of curse that knows what it's asking. The third is a blade, because Knox runs out of charges and never runs out of decisions. He goes in close enough that the Inquisitor sees him, and for the first time, the man's mouth tightens with something I think might be personal. He reaches for me with the invisible pressure of before, that hand on the back of the neck. This time, it meets the part of me that has been expecting it, that has had days of practice in saying no. It hurts. I do not fall. Astrid's voice, brittle and bright. Last one. The world tightens and then refuses to. The vortex stutters, stretches thin, snaps back, and suddenly the room is a geography of sparks. The Inquisitor lunges for Astrid and gets Knox instead, because Knox was there and always meant to be. Gia's second shot turns the lunge into a fall. The Inquisitor's face is briefly nobody's. The pressure drops out of the air like weather changing. Go, I say, and it is the easiest order I have ever given. We run. The facility's insides are coming apart in a logic that has nothing to do with architecture and everything to do with a mind recognizing a wound. The maintenance hatch becomes a birth canal. We are thrown into heat and light and sand again, and behind us, the basin collapses into itself like a chest, finally allowed to exhale after being held underwater. The shock wave lifts our bodies and sets them down with a gentleness that feels like apology. Silence after is a new kind of sound. The pressure in my skull that I had named necessity and curse is gone. Not reduced, gone. The inside of my head is my own in the way a room is your own when you have finally closed a door no one else has a key to. Astrid kneels in the sand, hands braced, shoulders shaking. I think she is crying until she laughs. The small laugh of a person who is not sure there would be a later for laughing. Knox is on his back like a man sunbathing after a good day's labor, chest heaving, eyes half-lidded, mouth blood-salted. Gia stands rifle loose, staring until the last plume sinks like a thought that has been had and does not need to be had again. We do not wait for the Empire to think. We go. The return is shorter, as if time has decided it owes us one. The network is not what we left. The Alliance ships have gone. The Empire has been pushed back, but not pushed off. The tents are fewer, the voices hoarser, the laughter louder, because it is not given often, and so is given well. We put down the packs and pick up the work. In the days that follow, the world readjusts by refusing to. The gas is different. When Astrid holds it up to the light in her vials, it does not shine the way it did. It is not inert. Nothing on Nephris ever is, but it has lost the hum that made our teeth sing. Prices fall. Off-worlders stop coming. The trading post's canopy sags without coin to hold it taut. Jir starts selling hammers and twine. The elders sit in their shade and do not call me in or out. They look past me with the dignity of people who were wrong and will not make their wrongness into a parade. Khan finds me on an evening scraped clean by the wind. He looks like himself, and not like the boy I knew, and not like the man who walked me to a door with the elders at his back. He holds out his hand, and I take it, and we stand like that until the sun decides we've had enough and goes down. I thought keeping you would keep us, he says. I thought leaving would save us, I say. Maybe we both were right and wrong. Maybe that's the only way to be. Astrid asks me to join her on the days when the lab needs hands brave enough to touch what it doesn't understand yet. I go some days. Other days, I can't bear the smell of the old hum, and I go to the range instead, where Gia corrects a recruit stance by nudging his ankle with her boot, and the boy looks at her like he has just been asked to grow into his own bones. Knox teaches me command without calling it that. He hands me a squad and says, "Bring them back." And I do. On days when the Empire tests our fences or the desert tries to convince us it does not need our weight on it. Jenna shows up to drill with the adults, and no one laughs at her because no one knows how to anymore. She shoots like she means it. She smiles like it costs and pays anyway. The visions don't return. In their absence, I discover a different kind of seeing. How a recruit who jokes too loud has hands that shake very slightly when he cleans his weapon. How a woman who never raises her voice can make a room remember itself with a single look. How the desert writes secrets in its own script and will teach you to read it if you bring it water and patience and the respectful arrogance of people who intend to live. At night, sometimes I climb the ridge above whatever we're calling home and listen to the quiet where the pressure used to be. It is not silence. I hear the network, the wind, the tiny lives that risk themselves for crumbs. But it is mine. I look at the sky and try not to count the other versions of us I will never meet. The Nephris that fell, the Kaiden who said yes, the Astrid who didn't make it out of a room that hummed in a key meant to lull mammals to obedience. I try not to make a map out of their absence. One evening, the horizon copper plates itself under the last of the light, and the settlement wears gold it hasn't earned and will never ask for. Knox finds me, sits without asking if he can, as if we were two old men already. He pulls a flask from a pocket and offers it. I drink, cough, hand it back. "Still looking?" he asks. I tell myself I'm not, I say. Then I find I've counted how many steps it takes to the ridge. Habit, he says, and grief. And hope, I say, because I refuse to cede that word. He grunts in a way that is almost assent. "Tomorrow," he says, "we train and fix the antenna again and argue about rations like kings. The Empire will remember us, or it won't, which is another kind of danger. Either way, the morning will ask us to be the same people we were today, and we'll have to decide whether that was good enough." It will be, I say, and I mean, we will be. Not perfect, not pure, present, stubborn. He leaves me there, and I let the dark do its honest work. Stars give themselves one by one to the open, the way confessions sometimes do when you promise not to turn them into weapons. I tilt my head and listen for a hum that is gone, and for a quieter music I'm learning to love. The slow percussion of tools, the whisper of tents shifting, the back and forth of two voices not arguing yet. I see my face in a shard of old hull someone propped as a windbreak. It looks older than the days that have passed, which feels right. The boy who harvested gas to make himself useful to men whose ledgers didn't include his name is gone. The man who went into a throat to cut a line is here. The future doesn't try to drown me anymore. It sits beside me, puts its shoulder against mine, and breathes. Tomorrow we will teach and build and hide when we must. We will keep the knives sharp and the kettles clean. We will remember the names of the dead and forbid our mouths to turn them into slogans. We will look at the children and try to make promises that don't taste like ash. Down in the settlement, someone laughs the high laugh of a child who has just outrun a friend. The sound travels like a rumor of rain. I hold it for as long as it lasts. Dawn will come, the gaudy, forgiving kind that Nephris throws on any patch of ground that's still standing. The light will chalk our tents and turn our dust to bronze. We will look like people who know what they're doing. That will be enough to begin again. I stand when the cold finds my ankles, take the ridge down step by careful step, and walk toward the work that waits for hands. The last stars burn down to stubborn embers. The eastern sky stains itself with the first thin line of heat. Ashes. And then, because we did not stop, because we chose, because we learned the art of cutting a thread and leaving the weave intact, dawn.